Discussion we were seeing data JPA. Okay, I'll go little more in depth into it. Okay, in case if you want uh, custom queries, how you can create, and if you want use native SQL, how we can create, I'll show you. Usually, in last session you asked for Hibernate also, right? If you want Hibernate model with Hibernate core Hibernate, if you want to use the steps, what you need to do is first, after creation of Spring Boot project, in application properties, you can mention all data source properties here. It will create connection pool object. You can mention all data source properties. It will create connection pool object. For Hibernate, right? Particularly, if you want Hibernate template for your application, create @bean session factory, create session factory, and you know how to create it. Create that session factory here and use this data source in your application. To use data source, right, you auto wire data source object. Wherever you have this configuration bean, by default data source will be available for you. The default data source will be available, which is coming from Spring Boot properties file. In Spring Boot properties, by default data source properties are available, so that it will create a high-carried data source object, and that you can inject here. So this data source will be injected here. Using this data source, you can create session factory. Now using this session factory, you can create Hibernate template. Create Hibernate template. So here you can use the session factory, whichever you created already. You can map the same session factory here to here. And this Hibernate template is available for you in your DAOs, right? Wherever you want, you can auto wire Hibernate template here. You can auto wire wherever you want, and you can use it. Using this Hibernate template, you can do all types of Hibernate operations, Hibernate CRUD operations, and native SQL operations. Everything you can do. Okay, here you can write any logic which you want. In case if you want to write native queries while using data JPA, repository class is not sufficient. Of course, repository also sufficient. I mean, in case if you don't want repository interface itself, usually what we are doing in data JPA, we are not creating any session factory or Hibernate templates, just configuring all the properties into properties file itself. In application dot properties, we are mentioning data source properties for connection pool and JPA, HBM to DDL, JPA properties also. You may say JPA properties like HBM to DDL, dialect class, all that we are configuring here. Along with your dependencies, we are adding dependencies like data JPA, Spring data JPA we are adding. So when you add data JPA, it will create for you Internal, it will create for you a connection pool object. It will create a bean at the rate bean connection pool, and it will create at the rate bean entity manager. It will create entity manager. It will create data source for you. I mean, these configurations are already available. If it is a Hibernate, you need to create a configuration class. You have to do all this stuff inside a configuration class. You know how to do this. At the rate configuration class, you will create. There you will create these beans. When you go with Spring Data JPA, this data source object will be created, and by passing this data source into entity manager will be created. So data source bean, entity manager beans already pre-configured into a pre-data source configuration classes. There are already predefined configuration classes we have. Within that configuration class, these beans will be created. And coming to implementation, data JPA implementation, right? When you have a repository here, something like student DAO or repository, repo, student DAO or student, we calling them repos, right? Repo. It should be an interface. We are creating an interface just by extending from JPA repository. If it is a SQL database, right, like Oracle or MySQL or DB2, we use JPA repository interface, and here we pass our bean class, comma, primary key, or composite primary key or composite primary key we pass there during creation of our interface. So here you need to pass your entity, whichever entity it is, student or employee or whatever it is. For each entity, we create one repository class, and we pass our entity here. And if that entity contains a primary key, the primary key data type you pass here. Or if you have composite primary key you should pass here. That's it. You even need not to implement any methods here. Without implementations, will there be any class in Java will work? No classes will work without implementations. Generally, without implementations, Java will not allow any objects. So for this interface at runtime, JPA will be providing one implementation. For iStudent repo, it will create one student repository class. It will implement a class, a concrete class, just by implementing from your interface. From your interface, one runtime implementation will be provided. For your class, one runtime implementation will be provided with all basic CRUD operation methods: save, update. For update in JPA, they are suggesting the same method. Use save only, save all, delete, find methods, find by ID, find all. Like this, few default methods they given in this implementation, right? You will be getting default methods. Apart from this default methods which it is giving, apart from the default methods which is giving, right, as a runtime implementation, defaults implementation. If you want any additional methods, you can put that additional methods here. You can put that additional methods here into interface. Let's say find by ID only I have, find by name I want, or find by name and email I want. You can create it here using the same similar signature. Find signature only. Use find by. This is common practice. You need to use the same name, find by, when you want to create custom method. And now from here onwards, you can create your own custom query after find by. This will be treated like where condition. where on this entity table, if this entity is mapping to student table, when you use find by, it will create select star from student where condition. It will apply where what, on which field, find by name. Then it will create query like select internally, right, while executing it. Select star from find by will provide where condition. When you mention a name, right, it will use that key here, and the value need to be passed placeholder. One placeholder will be added into that placeholder. Whatever input you give here, right, the same input value it will be supplied. Whatever name you give here, right, that name as a value it will be substituted here. And where this method will be generated along with your default methods, right, one more method will be added. When you add your custom methods, right, this custom methods also will be added into your implementation. And during execution of these custom methods, it will execute queries like this. Internally, query engine will be generating SQL queries. End of the day, all your JPA or Hibernate need to be generated SQLs only. End of the day, SQL query need to be generated. That SQL query need to be passed to database. Otherwise, database will not understand your requirement. So the finally generated SQL query will be passed to database and it will fetch result. That result will be returned to you. So during returning it, usually as we are using JPA, right, it will give you object. Same entity A as a return type it will provide you. So that you need to keep it as a return type here. If it is simple method or simple query, you can write like this. Or if you want one more field, name and email, something like this. Name and condition you want to add and email. You can add that here. Find by name. After name, you can put and email. Name and email. As the same method, you can write name after name and email. You need to pass two inputs now here. String name, comma string email. This method needs two inputs. You are asking find by name and email. When you use find by name and email, it will generate query like select star from name, select star from table where name is equal to something and email equal to something. It will substitute both. In case apart from this simple AND conditions, if you want to greater than, let's say find employee by salary greater than, if you want to apply, you can apply greater than, less than, equal to. This is like equal to only. Find by name, find by email or equal to. If you want greater than, you can put greater than GT, less than LT. If you want a like condition, you can apply like also. Find by name like. During generation of queries, the JPQL engine or query engine will understand your requirement and it will generate a query for you. But strictly you need to follow this naming conventions. Whatever field name you use here, right, this field should be there in your entity, and whatever keywords you are using here between entity and entity, that keyword should be matched with your SQL query keywords. Like and I have here, so the same and you will be having here. If you have like, you will be using like. If it is greater than something GT, you will be using here as a character. Greater than GT, less than LT, like that. Okay. So custom queries you can create like this. Instead of custom queries, if you want native SQLs also, you can apply native SQLs. So in case I can't able to create with a particular name by following naming conventions, I can't create that query JPQL. Instead of that, I want to use at the rate query here. In at the rate query, I want to pass my required native query here. You can pass it by mentioning native query is equal to true. native query type is equal to true. We pass query here. Query is equal to some native query directly you can compose here. Directly native query you can give here. Whatever query you want, select star from blah blah blah, you can pass. In case if you don't want this repository at all, default repository is sufficient for me, which is given save or delete find methods. For custom queries, I want to create a separate DAO class altogether. A separate DAO class I want to create. And there I want to do all the CRUD operations. I want to write my custom queries methods here. So how we can do it? So if you have such class, you know you will be creating them by using @repository, and within that class you can auto where your entity manager. Already data source and entity manager are created. Already that objects are created with pre-configured configuration class. So now simply get that entity manager here, and in your methods, right? If you have create method or save method, save with entity you are getting, and you want to do custom CRUD operations here. I don't want to use repository. So then use entity manager. Entity manager dot save, give your entity, it will save it. Or by using entity manager, if you want to create native queries, you can create them. Entity manager dot create native query and pass something like your JDBC queries here. Native SQL queries. It will give you a query object, something like Hibernate only. Same style. After here, right? Same style. Hibernate implementation only. Get this query. After query, you know what to do. Query dot list. It will return you the entities. In Hibernate, we use session factory, session dot create query, create native query, something like that. Entity manager given here. Entity manager dot create native query, create queries. If you go across that Hibernate, right, you can say related to it. JPA entity manager is something like your session factory. It's a JPA entity manager. JPA API we have like Hibernate. In Hibernate we use session factory. In JPA we use entity manager. Okay. Yeah. So using entity manager, you can create native queries and you can do all CRUD operations. Okay, this is also possible in case if you have any custom queries that you want to deal with, right? You can create a repository, a custom repository. There you can auto wire entity manager. How this entity manager will be available? Do I need to create means? No. By default, Spring Data JPA will create one entity manager for you. That entity manager bean you can auto wire wherever you want. The default entity manager will be available for you. So wherever you want, you just auto wire it and you can create custom queries. It is similar to session factory, not like Hibernate template. It's like a session factory. Okay. Yeah. So in the last example, we saw Oracle connection, right? Oracle. Yeah. So we used the Oracle connection and created it a data source, and the JPA HBM to DDL update we are using, and we have a simple student bean which is mapped to student table. and here I have HVM to DDL Hibernate property we have, right? HVM to DDL, HVM to DDL auto to create tables automatically. Here this is your mapping, right? Bean class, student bean class, which is mapped to this table. If this table is not available, this DDL property will create for you if your option is create. If your option is update also, it will create if table not available. If your option is create hyphen drop, during application start it will create and you can test it. When you shut down your application, it will drop your table again from database. And here you can have validate. It will just validate your bean with the table, whether this bean properties id name email address is available in table or not. If it is available in table, it will say okay, otherwise it will give you exception that saying id not available, name not available, email not available, address not available, like that. Bean property should be available in table. These properties are nothing but columns in table. No, there is a difference, right? Create will create table. Create will create a table in database. Whereas update, if no table, then it will create. If table is there, it can do alter also. Create can't do alter. So today your application is ready with name, email address. Tomorrow one phone number field also I introduced here. If your option is create, create will not introduce this new column. It will not create it. Create only first time if table not available, then it will create. If table available, it will not do anything. When I introduce new columns going future, when I put update here, right, it will alter your table, alter and adds additional columns. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So now here we created a simple repository interface, student repository, by extending from JPA repository, and by default these are not default methods. So by default it will provide some methods, right? Some aggregate methods like count, some delete methods like for CRUD operations, delete all, delete, checking for is exist method, find all method, find by id, get by id, save. So few methods only you have. In case if you want to generate your custom methods, you can generate them here. Find by email, when you apply internally, it will generate a query on your table. This is your table, student ds tab. When you write like this, internally it will generate a query, select a star from table where email id, email equal to email, name equal to name, address equal to address, name and email. So it will generate a query, name is equal to some value and email equal to some value. Like this you can generate. And you can put at the rate query also on top of these methods. Your custom queries you can apply here. You can have a method without naming conventions. You can have something get data, something like this I have. Not required. Just using at the rate query. For at the rate query, this is interface only, right? Interface implementation only. So in case if you want a pure custom DAO class, then you can create. So here you can put your create query. Select the star from. You can put JPA query. like this, from bean, and bean properties you can give, where name equal to named parameter name and email equal to email. So in this name will be substituted. In this email will be substituted, and one student record will be getting here. Here you can write use native query also. Instead of at the rate query only, I think here we have attribute native query is equal to mention true, and pass your native query is equal to true, and what attribute I have, value. You pass your query here. When native query is true, you can write pure native query. Select star from table name. Native queries will involve table names, whereas JPA queries will involve your bean names. If you see here, where your column names, whichever columns you have in table, right? The same table column names you should use here. So this is how native queries also you can write. Any big native query you can write here. A simple query or joins based query you can write just by mentioning native query is equal to true. If it is simple query, you can write JPA query here. Okay, JPA or Hibernate queries, right? HQL based queries you can write here. Line number 16. Native queries are your SQL queries only. Pure SQL queries. Pure SQL. This is HQL, or you may call JPA variation, right? JPQL. JQL also you can say the above one. From student, this way of writing on bean is JPA query. Sorry, HQL query or JQL query you can call. This is pure database query, right? In database also you can run as is this query. In JPA not required. In Hibernate not required. You go through my Hibernate videos. In 2015 I given recordings. In Durgasoft channel you have all Hibernate videos. There you go and go through each video. They discussed depth about HQL queries, how to write, how HQL query will be again generated as a SQL. Okay. So when you write simple queries, there will be a engine, Hibernate engine, which means a class. Okay, a class will be there. That class will generate again native queries. When you use this, right, automatically this query finally will be converted like this only. That will be generated by some helper classes. When you use HQL queries for developer convenience, they given this type of queries. As a developer, you don't want to use table names, you don't want to put table column names here and want to write queries, you can write them. But end of the day, this query need to be converted like SQL only, and it should execute on table only, on this table only. So it will be generated finally like this only. Okay, there will be some query engine classes. They do that favor for you. Okay, so this is how also you can write your native queries. PL SQL is a programming language. Yeah, SQL we call SQL. Every database will have a SQL engine. That SQL engine will expect SQL queries. Okay, database SQL queries. Yeah, maybe in your terms PL SQL code. Okay, you need to write that SQL code here, pure SQL code. When you use native query is equal to true. So this repository not only providing default methods, In case if you want to write custom methods also, you can write that too. In custom methods, if you want to use JPA, you can use JPA based query, native based query. Or if you want to write without the query, if you want to write by just following naming conventions, find by name, and just by following keywords you want to write, you can write them. Three approaches you have, totally four. Default methods, by following naming conventions, JPQL methods, by following at the rate query, HQL queries you can write, by using native queries also you can write. Okay, so depends on your requirement. So as soon as queries becoming difficult, you may not able to put them by using simple naming conventions. You may need to use queries here. Your HQL queries and SQL queries looks the same, but we write this on bean, we write this on table. That's it. That is the only difference. Same joins, everything you can apply here also. Whichever join queries you have, having where classes, group by classes, whichever you want, you can apply the same here as well, or here as well. Okay. Apart from this, if you want to write more, native query, you don't want repo class, you want to create custom repository class itself, you can create a simple class. Okay, I want to implement DAO class. So a class, if you want to write with the entity manager, you can auto wire entity manager here. So JPA entity manager you can auto wire here, and you can write your required DO methods. Public student save, more like a hibernate operations, plain hibernate operations. If you want to do here, you can do here entity manager dot save. Uh, Find we have very same method. Refresh the state of instance of the database overwriting persist. Sorry, yeah. Use persist method. It will save your data, and finally this method will return you nothing. Fine. Maybe return same object. If you want to write any custom queries, execute my custom query. You can write your custom queries also here. Entity manager dot create native query, and you can create native query here. So it will give you query object. Let's say if you want to return list of students, you can get it from list, q dot list. result list. So it will return you a list of student objects. You can play with it actually. You can put your native queries here and you can do whatever you want. Okay. So in this many styles you can create your repositories. The best approach is first go with the repository interface only, and maximum you can able to put all your methods here, even custom methods also you can put here. First to go with this approach by something JPA naming conventions you can follow, this repository naming conventions you can follow and create your methods. Automatically it will generate a query for you. If you are not able to do that, at least go with this approach, right? If it is too difficult, you are joining multiple tables, more than one table, join queries you have having group by multiple classes you are using here, then you may go with the native query like this. If you see there are a number of native queries, lot of customizations are required, then go with this approach. Maybe entity manager you auto-write in your do class and write it. Okay, where you have lot of difficult code you need to write, write, or procedures functions you need to call, then go with this approach. Okay, so as entity manager is available for you, you can play with it. Any doubt so far? You can you can you can call procedures. Query will allow or not, I am not sure, but there should be a way. Definitely using native query, or by using native query you can call named stored procedure query. See, they given a separate query for stored procedures. You can call your stored procedure here. Proc you can call whatever procedures you have, in parameter, out parameters you can pass. No, there also you should able to. You should able to. Here also you should able to call your procs. Try it. There is an approach I think. Somewhere you may call it, okay. But here I see this is a little complicated here. I mean, I need to use query, and I should pass that query, and query equivalent input variable names I should give here, and finally the expected bean I should give here. I feel little bit complicated when I feel this is complicated to create, right? I go this approach, and here I'll be having a lot of flexibility. I can create my own method and I can play with it. If you able to achieve it, this is the best approach, undoubtedly. Okay. Hey, just a minute, guys. Just a minute. Just a minute. Hello. Yeah, yeah. ఓకే. పిల్లగాడు హాలిడే అని పంపించాను. నేను చెప్తాను. ఈ పూటే చేస్తున్నారా? ఓకే. తనకి హాలిడే అని నేనే ఊరికి పంపించాను. కాల్ చేస్తాను. తను వచ్చే పనైతే వస్తాడు. లేకపోతే కష్టం. ఒకసారి నేను కాల్ చేస్తాను. నేను కూడా లేను యాక్చువల్‌గా ఊరొచ్చేసాను. అయ్యో! నేను చేస్తానుండండి ఆయన. దగ్గరలో ఉంటే ఏమన్నా వస్తాడు. తనుండేది సిటీలోనే. ఆహ్, యాహ్! యాహ్! తనే వస్తాడులెండి. నేను చేసి చెప్తాను. ఇష్ అవును. లీకేజ్ అవుతుంటది. యాహ్! 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 షూర్. నెక్స్ట్ 1 అవర్‌లో 1 అవర్, 2 అవర్స్‌లో ఉండమని చెప్పనండి. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, if he can able to come in next 1 or 2 hours, it's okay, na? Yeah, yeah. సరేనండి. నేను పంపించేస్తాను. Sorry. Yeah. So let me show you quickly. I'll share this example with you. You can try a lot of uh, types as we have, right? You can try, and let me show you this example we tried. We executed and we got the result also. I'll be showing you MongoDB, NoSQL DB repository also. I'll show you. Um, Here I have. Okay. Just instead of JPA repository, we use Mongo repository. JPA repository is for SQL actually. Okay. So while using JPA repositories, these repositories will be helpful for only SQL databases, for not for NoSQL DBs. Okay. So for Mongo, the Spring Boot given support, Mongo repository also given. Okay. So let's see the difference. Okay. If it is Mongo, I should have MongoDB. Yeah. If you have graph repositories, graph database, I think graph support also given. Uh, I used somewhere like Mongo repository. We have graph repositories also. Not for XML. It is a object storage. I mean, document storage only. As an object, it will store in a JSON format. Your data will be stored as a JSON. Mongo repositories. Let's see Mongo model. So while using Mongo model, same like primary key IDs we can put, and uh, remaining columns that are not required. If you want to, if you have different naming conventions, you can put, but mostly we maintain the same naming convention here and there. As it is, this object will go and save it into the database, and here you need to mention at the rate document when you want to map it, and setters and getters we have. And this is bean. We are not using any entity, or we are not using at the rate table. That all stuff not required directly. You can use. You can use. It's an alternate, right? You can. It will provide both setter and getter. Anyway, setter and getter. I think equals also it will provide to string and equals. Okay. One, two, three, four, five methods. By default, it will provide setters, getters, required constructors, to string and equals and hash code. Now for this one, you need a repository class. So here is your repository interface extending from Mongo repository. For SQL database, we used for MySQL or Arcil, we are using simple JPA repository. Here we are using Mongo repo. So in JPA, we used to map bean class by mentioning entity and table. We map to our table, and we use all this at the rate ID, column, blah 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 stuff we use. For Mongo, simple document is sufficient. And for primary key, you mention ID. This is for auditing purpose created, auditing parameters. Like while creating, it need to create a time, updated time that I need. For that purpose, that is created. Okay. So usually audit data also we save right in tables when a record is created, when record is updated, to know who did that record creation or updation, when they did it, created by, updated by, created time, updated time. So to maintain these properties, this audit listener has been configured. Exactly, this one. This one is going to supply that parameters for you. The time parameters, okay? Created time, updated time, it will provide. Actually, not mandatory. You can ignore it. You can ignore it actually. Okay, you can ignore. These all are in case if you want to do auditing automatically. As a developer, you need not to pass these values actually. You need not to pass. Listener will pass for you. Okay, we need not to deal with them. Now coming to the properties while using Mongo database, right? Particularly dependency, you need to use Mongo dependency here. You need to use Spring Data Mongo. You should use. Whereas for data JPA we used data JPA dependency, right? For document DB, particularly Mongo, Spring Boot starter data MongoDB, you need to configure here. So this will enable Mongo repositories and Mongo based cloud operations you can do. So this is the mandatory dependency that you should have. And coming to properties, so just your DB URL bus. Okay. So basically, if it is encrypted URL with username passwords, you need to pass that encrypted URL. If it is production DB or your UAT DBs, right? They'll provide encrypted URL. If it is a local one, you can simply keep it MongoDB localhost and port number default 27017 and your schema name. In MongoDB, you can create your DB schemas here. Okay, you may call them databases. So there your collections will be stored whenever you do cloud operation. If you want, you may test it. Here we have controller for it. API slash students. When we do post mapping of a student object with ID, name, email, and address, it will go and store as a document in database. Maybe you can try and check it. Application started in 9090. Localhost 9090. So this is the Swagger URL. Call the post method. ID something 10. Some name here. Save it. I think some default giving 201. One ID must be generated. That ID it is sending 1000 plus 1. No, 10,000 plus 1. So the default generated ID, I believe. So finally it got saved here. Maybe go to database and see. Open this collection and see the data got. Oh no, find. Yes, Mongo Compass is like your, yeah, sequential developer SMS hyphen Mongo. SMS hyphen Mongo here. Just a minute. Yeah, here is the data. And this additional parameters, as I said, right? Created date, updated time. It is storing here. And your class name also, which beans object it is. So Compose, yeah, Compass is like your SQL developer only. Like for MySQL, how I am using Workbench. For Arkill, we have Arkill homepage, right? Similar to it. Via Compass, I can able to access my MongoDB and I can be able to create the schemas collections there. This is JSON structure, right? Looking like JSON, right? A document structure. I'm not depth into it. No, uh, I'm not depth into it. But as I know, it will store as a collection. A simple list object you can imagine. Okay, as a collection, it will store your objects. I'm not sure about internal data structure, but yeah, you can apply all the indexes also, like for performance improvements, right? If you have multiple columns, if you want to apply indexes also, you can apply here. Unique key property, index by default ID as an index here. You may create a new indexes for your table, and here you can write something like queries also here to get the data, field name and value, something like that. Yeah, maybe you can explore it. Okay. Just a minute. Yeah, Smita, go ahead. No, no, not in the browser. In your project, you need to add it. Okay, this is not coming from the browser. We will have a separate discussion. Okay, tomorrow I want to go with actuators, dev tools, and Swagger also. Okay, we will discuss it. So one open API Swagger plugin added here. we see here, this is added. Okay, just this plugin is added, it will generate Swagger for you. Yeah, sure, we will have that discussion. Okay, I need a separate Maven discussion for it. Auto configure. Auto configure. Okay, Spring Bean auto configurations. Yeah, so okay, yeah, we'll discuss that. Okay, yeah, sure. We'll see what all default auto configurations we have, how we can disable, enable them. First, let us see what all defaults we have. Let us learn how to utilize them. Later, we will see how to disable them in case of something if we don't want. Okay, how to put our custom configurations as part of default configurations, that we will see. Okay, yeah, that's it. I'll share these examples. These examples are having UI also. UI code we have and REST code also we have. I generated them using a tool. Now the tool is not working, but I'll try show that tool also. There is one open source Bootify they given. Here we can generate applications. Spring Boot applications it will generate end to end code it will give you. You see this UI, it is generated by Bootify. This form also generated. Validation messages, everything it is generated. This edit screens. Okay, I'll show you that as well. Okay, in case if you have any quick requirements to generate code, within minutes you can write the code. Useful tool. Okay, Bootify. Yeah, Bootify.com. You may explore it. Okay, Bootify .io. Yeah, or else I'll explain you how to create. But you guys also can try. It's easy thing to try. Beautiful tool. If you find anything such like you can share it with me. I was continuously exploring it, but I didn't find something like this. Yeah. It is to generate code, end to end code. Okay. Yeah, we'll see that maybe after tomorrow's session. Okay. Tomorrow we will see actuator and dev tools. Okay. Uh, yeah, and one end to end example we will see with web and REST. Both we will try, and then we can you know start with an email service also. I can explore you exception handling also. Okay, we will have a separate discussion. Yeah, you go through it. We will have a separate discussion. Okay, I can't include here, but I'll invite other students also. Maybe one workshop itself I'll take for it. Okay, yeah, Maven and Git. I will take one session for it. Maybe in upcoming weeks. Okay, yeah. No, I'm planning end to end actually. Uh, I mean the dots, whichever is missing, right? I want to add them there. Advanced Java also we can take up, but Yeah, I don't go depth to there. I can't get that much time. Maybe 3 4 hours of discussion we will be having. Next coming weeks I'll schedule. Okay, this entire month I'll be busy. Maybe in November first week or second week I'll plan one for advanced Java, one for tools. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow we will see up to whatever we can cover we will cover. I want to start microservices as soon as possible, and same the boot discussions we will do there with the microservices architecture. Okay. If anything, if you feel missing here, also we can add them there. You can bring any topics if you want, and transactions also, right? I want to cover end to end. The transactions also I'll take up. Spring batch also correct. And you can try with this JPA. Okay, I will share these three examples now here itself. What you can do, Spring JPA with batch inserts, right? Multiple inserts, multiple updates. You can try. Mm, no, I don't think you will find it. Yeah, there also you have, but not these many examples. I don't think you have. Just a minute. Yeah, GitHub be given, right? There you can download. I didn't upload it at there. I will upload it now. Let me upload it. So this is MySQL based example. Oh, sorry, Mongo one. SMS. You can see Mongo one is uploaded. MySQL and Arkel both looks same, but the driver will change. Driver URLs will change. Yeah, we have these three. Okay, you can look into that. Yeah, and other than this, basic examples are in the blog also. Few examples we have. Spring. Just a minute. Definition. Spring Boot. Not here. Yeah. So here we have components scan, the first example which I given, and web servers one. Simple REST controller with Ajax call given, uh, with jQuery Ajax and data JPA given, and simple login application also given. Okay, you just simply download them and import and see how they work. I can show you that application. No, let me give this URL. The path is different actually. So here you need to click on Spring Starters. When you click, it navigates to this page. In Hibernate, I think you have access. When you click Hibernate, it will give you all examples. Here you have all the examples. There you have. Not properly added that link. Go to the main page. From there, you click on Hibernate URL. You will get the Hibernate examples page also. You can click on the status. If you are in spring.html page, click on Spring status. Okay. Yeah. Okay, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll show you these examples. Okay. With the web UI also, I'll show you. With the web and rest also. Uh,